I suppose I'd like to start just by commending again all of those that are involved in volunteering in so many sectors across, Cavan and all of our country. I mean, you have people who work with children, with our youth, with our sports organisations, drama. You've got community development organisations. You've got tidy towns, older people, disabled people. I want to just mention, though, I suppose PPNs. I think PPNs do vital work in sort of supporting the voluntary and community sector in all of our counties. And I mean, they give them a voice on SPCs that they can influence policy and decision making. But they also are involved in networking between organisations and providing training and providing advice. And I think they're really, really important, and I want to commend them. I suppose I would look back at my own life, and I volunteered in many different capacities, and sometimes you do without even thinking it. You actually said, like, our involvement in a political party, you're volunteering quite a bit of your time in that. But I would have been involved as a Feroiga leader in my time. I would have been involved in extracurricular at school, and it gives you a different perspective of working with young people, because you're just not teaching them in the classroom, you're actually meeting them on a different level. But it actually builds the relationship and improves the relationship then you have them with them in school. I was also involved in a community development organisation in my local area, and we actually built a community centre there, and that was heavily influenced by the need for something. There was an organisation called Kinelec Social Services, and they did really important work with older people in the community, and they just needed a place where they could bring people for different activities on a regular basis, provide them with a hot meal, and have a little bit of entertainment and engagement. And it's an organisation that's wonderful and has been going for many, many years. I just also want to mention Positive Age in Cavan, and they work with older people as well, and it's all volunteer-led as well, and it's really important in providing support to older people. I suppose I want to mention as well, volunteers from other countries. Like, there's been a huge number of people who've come here as asylum seekers or come here to work from other countries and have got involved in the local community, and it's wonderful to see, and I think it's a great way of integrating people into communities. I would have engaged with the National Youth Council of Ireland before this week, and I suppose they have a few comments just on the youth sector in relation to volunteers involved in youth work. And it was they would say the volunteer youth work is the cornerstone of the youth sector in Ireland. Like, the majority of young people who engage in youth clubs do with the volunteer-led youth clubs, but they do really feel that there's insufficient training and support for volunteers, and for their development and their recruitment and retention of volunteers within the youth sector, because they say they're essential to sustaining youth work infrastructure, particularly in rural and community-based settings. And the launch of Ireland's first national volunteering strategy in December 2020, it was a landmark step, and it was recognising and supporting the unique contribution of volunteers. And I'm delighted to know that there's another one being prepared and will follow up during this year. But it did introduce a comprehensive set of measures to ensure the sustainability and development of volunteering across Irish society. But without consistent investment in volunteer support and in club development, the sector risks losing its reach and its diversity and grassroots involvement. So I suppose just like to continue to see training provided, but participation costs sometimes need to be covered, and just, I suppose, formal recognition of the governance role within youth organisations and indeed other organisations as well. Like, some people have already mentioned it here, that we have to be careful that we don't overburden, especially smaller organisations who only have maybe a small number of volunteers, with a lot of regulation. Regulation is important. We have to ensure that there's good governance in all of these sectors, and I recognise that there are different organisations established, such as the charity regulator, to ensure all of that is done properly. But we have to ensure that there's investment in both training and support staff, but also in administrative roles, and that it doesn't become too cumbersome for smaller organisations. I suppose, just to say, volunteers may give their time freely, but they're not cost-free. So, for example, and it has been mentioned here again already, many organisations have had to recruit additional staff solely to manage vetting requirements. So going back to the youth work sector, the Volunteer Activation Fund was a valuable initiative that recognised these pressures, and it's not yet been confirmed for 2026, so maybe you can confirm, Minister, that that Volunteer Activation Fund will continue, because it creates certainty for organisations that rely heavily on volunteers. So thank you.